Hello and welcome back to our little cottage renovation journey. In our last video, we took on the first steps of transforming the loft into something special. From seeing the space bare and full of potential to learning new skills, like my first attempt with the drop saw. James prepared the wall studs, carefully cut the gyprock, and together we pieced it all together, one panel at a time. Today we are continuing this project, sharing my progress as we turn this space into something truly cozy and unique. Let's dive back in.
Right, so about a week on, the plasterboard sheeting is just about finished. Not that exciting really. There's one little bit to do. And the problem we have here is that we're planning to mount a wall fan up there, just for a bit of extra airflow, and there's nothing to mount it to. So I've managed to find some pieces of plywood, came from old pallets, and still making use of those 65mm decking screws, and I'm just going to screw that in place so it'll be under the plasterboard, ready for when the fan turns up. Could have actually used just some short pieces of 35mm pine stud there, but we haven't actually got the fan yet. We couldn't find one locally that was small enough, so we've ordered one online, and we don't really know where it's exactly the mounting pattern, and the cable will need to go into the wall, so having a bit of a void in behind here with the plasterboard that's sitting out from the stud that's behind it will mean we can drill through and then poke a cable that way and just get to it from inside the ceiling space. I'm just cutting out for the light switch. Just measure 100mm. There. This one's for PowerPoint. I've already drilled a hole because I can get to the other side. I was around there putting the mounting plate in. I just punched a hole through. Let's start. Now I just have to clean up a big mess. Right, it's time to tape up the joints. I'm using the fiberglass tape, even though it's considerably more expensive than the paper tape, but I've had lots of problems with the paper tape in the past. It just bubbles when you apply the base coat to it, because you have to embed it in the first base coat, whereas this one just sticks on. You put the base coat over it. Tried all sorts of different ratios of water to plaster, trying to make a drier mix to stop the paints, the tape swelling and bubbling, but I was unsuccessful, and a number of people who I've spoken to about it have the same problem. But if you speak to I did speak to one plasterer about it, and he said, yep, that's your fault, you're doing something wrong, but I thought I'd tried everything. So anyway, it's just easier to use this. It does actually give you a little bit more breathing time when you're doing the base coat, because you don't have to do this while you've got wet plaster. The base coats have a limited time before they set. You can buy it. I think there's a 30-minute, I used the 45-minute setting time, and then there's a 60. This is left over from the barn I did upstairs in the barn. So really don't want to buy another whole roll because I won't need it ever again, hopefully. In case you don't know, what this does is it basically joins the sheets together. If you didn't put this in here and just plastered the joint when the building moves, either with just vibration or you know, expansion and contracting with heat and moisture, all of these joints would reappear. You'd end up with big long cracks right along. So you have to do it to every single joint. And then the base coat, which is the structural coat, it provides the strength and holds everything together. Sorry about the daggy glasses. These are my workshop glasses. Yes, had enough. We are back and the plastering is done. I didn't want to show you that bit because firstly it's a bit time critical. The base coat does set very quickly, especially when it's a bit out of date like the bag that I was using. Secondly, I'm not very good at it, so I don't want you to see me making a mess, fixing it, making a mess and then fixing it again. So I've had a bit of a tidy up. There's still a bit more tidying up to go. It's a lot of dust and mess from the sanding of the joints. And then it's time to make the door frames for here and there. And then we're going to sand the floor, do some architraves and paint. Making the frame for those doors that go out into the roof space. It's raining a lot today, so I'm not setting up outside, and I'm not using the drop saw in here because it makes a mess. So we're cutting these by hand. That worked out, thankfully. Right, that's one done. It doesn't have to be square yet. We'll square that up once we put it into the wall frame. So this gets a little difficult. Firstly, because it's not vertical. The wall's not vertical, so of course the frame tends to want to fall out of the wall all the time instead of just sitting there in place. Just wedge it for now, top and bottom. Now we have to get it at the height's actually not so critical here. Theory it should match the other side, but no one's going to notice. It's only a few millimeters either way. What worked out really nicely is that the 68 millimeter architrave is going to, on the other side, we managed to get 69 millimeters there, so the architrave would sit perfectly, but we're going to have to trim down the one on this side just because of it starts with the roof trusses. They're just slightly out of line by a few millimeters. That's only 65, so 4 millimeters or so. So we really want, because this is noticeable, we want this side parallel to the wall, even if it's not quite vertical, but it should be. The other side worked out well. So that's sitting at 65, so that's good there. So a box of random packers. It's these plastic ones that you can buy, but who likes, I don't like consuming plastic. I've made up got some random little timber ones and timber wedges. Found these quite handy. Someone gave them to me, but they interlock, so you can adjust the height of them to where you want, really. But they're just slightly too thick for here. Just typical. Let's try and keep the gap top and bottom sort of similar, so we can adjust later because it needs to be. You want it to be square. That one sticks out. I don't really want to tap it in. Let's see. Can always, once everything's all nailed in place, you can pull it out or you can cut it off. Now the next trick, the next thing is you've got to get this dead flush with the wall, because the architrave, if you have it sitting out or sitting in, the architrave won't sit nicely. End up with a gap. Right, so that's good there. Just hammer those back nails in, which are a bit smaller. Just a little bit for now, so we can pull them back out if we need to, because I'll probably make a mess of it. Vertical. Yeah, that's pretty good. The next catch will be to get this square. It's actually sitting square at the moment, which is good. So we'll get some wedges in top and bottom. theory this should be square because I made the frame, I made sure it was the same dimensions either way, so it should, if one corner square, all corners should be square. So that's actually wedged right against the wall frame here, so we don't need to pack that at all. That's pretty close at the top as well. Okay, so hopefully that's all done. Well, it's in place. Just check. That is actually sitting out just a touch. Tap it in. All right, I'm happy with that. So now it's just a case, I've got these bigger nails here. Normally you wouldn't use big nails like this, but I needed the length because I've put the jam in first. I thought it was easier to do it all cutting it. I was down in the barn cutting, nailing it all together down there. And the jam's very big, but again, I had the timber, so may as well use it. I didn't have the usual 31 by 11, which you'd use for this purpose. So I just needed longer nails to go through this, through the reveal or the door frame and then into the wall frame. Just need to put some support behind that while I nail it. So. Haven't cracked any plaster yet. I sound paranoid, don't I? Really, this should have gone in after the wall sheet, but before the plastering was done. I just kind of forgot. All right, so now I just need to center punch the nails, and then the architrave goes on around here. So these wedges can actually come out because when the architrave goes on, it pins it the frame to the wall frame, so it can't move then. All right, so the floor has been sanded. I didn't film that because I'd just be filming a cloud of dust really, and that's not very interesting. Holes for the light done, holes ready for the fan that's going up there. The next thing is to put architraves around the doors and the windows. So I've already cut them ready. Fingers crossed I did it right. That one's a bit long, but better than being too short. These ones are a mil shorter for the other side, so I might be able to use that just to finish this one. I'm going to cut that one down a bit more. Now, even that's just a touch long. So, all right, back to the saw. Yep, much better. hammer for about 45 years and still can't do it properly. Okay, so three, there's only 3 doors are now finished. There was a bit of messing around up in these corners here, because as you can see the ceiling comes up and takes off the corner of the architrave, so it's actually quite difficult to measure properly. There's a few gaps there and nail holes need to be filled, but that can be fixed. There's also a bit of a problem with the door now, because when you open it, it only goes that far. It's because these little horizontal braces at the back now hit the architrave, so the door's going to have to come off and be modified. And the other problem we have is that the handle's now not on there because it needs to, I've lost the piece, the latch that it goes into needs to sit flush with the door, but it can't. It used to be sitting on the door frame. Now it can't sit there on an angle. It can sit there. The latch will reach out to there, but that's going to have to mount there. So this, we're going to have to put a block there, the thickness of the architrave, to keep the handle out in the same plane. But no big deal, just more painting, that sort of thing. Alright, the next job is the window. What we're actually going to do is put a bit of a wide sill here that's going to go across the full width of the room. It's kind of in keeping with what we've done with the other windows in this building. Because Cartier, being from Germany, they have really thick exterior walls on their buildings, so sort of a foot or 450 mil, I don't know what they are, but you know, to insulate against the cold. Here our walls are generally 100 millimeters thick, so we made the window sills wider downstairs, and that's worked out really handy. So what we're going to do here, I'm going to put a 300 millimeter piece across here, the full width. But it gets a bit tricky because it needs to recess into the window there, and then we've got to make the wall won't be dead flat because the corners, see these corners where the plaster are, they're not exactly square. That's the trick with plaster ceilings. Plaster walls, sorry, they only appear to be flat. They're rarely flat because of joins and the corners needing plaster in them. So what I'm going to do, the skirting that we're using, actually, because this is such a small room, we're using the same same timber as the architrave. Normally the skirting would be the same sort of design, but taller. So it's 66 millimeters, and this is 64 odd millimeters. So to save a lot of hassle down the track, I'm actually going to block this up, lift this piece that'll sit here up by 2 millimeters on there. So then the skirting back out, which will be back out about here, that will sit nicely under the edge, and we won't need to trim it down and then have the hassle of when the skirting's running along here. It's going to fit in nicely with that sill. So let's get into it. I managed to find some short pieces of pine stud, which probably would have ended up being thrown out. So I'm going to make use of them. Now I have to cut them down. last time I used this, I was making packers that I mentioned earlier, and I just found 2 pieces of them sitting in the saw guard underneath, which is awesome because they're going to be what we need. So now you can screw these down to the floor. These are going to sit like that to support that sill. So they're 66 millimeters, and we're just screwing into the flooring. So ideally you'd want, the flooring's about 20 millimeters, no, maybe 22. So ideally you'd want 66 and 2 and 20 is 85 millimeter screws, but I don't know if you can get them, and I don't have any. I had some 75s, but not enough. Found the trusty 65 millimeter climber coat decking screws. I've got enough of them left, so I'm going to just countersink them a bit. So if we want to go down into the floor 20 millimeters, we don't really want to go any deeper than that because there could be some electrical cabling down there. We don't want to screw into that. So 66 minus 65 mil screws, it's 1 mil difference, down 20. So we really want, just going to mark the drill bit at about 20 mil. It'll be near enough. That's just a bit of electrical tape as a guide. And we just countersink. There's 2 screws in each one. I prefer to countersink first because if you've already got the pilot hole in there and then you countersink, the drill tends to grab and it pulls down and you end up deeper than you want to be. Yes, these drills are getting a bit on the blunt side. Having said that, some of this pine stud is getting a bit old and it's actually gone quite hard. It almost feels like hardwood. Alright, because we're drilling into hardwood flooring, I would like to drill at least a bit of a pilot hole. Just to help the screws go in, hopefully not split the flooring, even though this is all covered up. Yes. Right, here's the big piece of pine that we're going to use to make that sill out of. Really don't want to mess this up. I did that with the hand saw because I don't trust myself with a circular saw with an accurate cut like this. It's almost there. There's just a little bit of a gap here, which I'd rather not have. It's probably 1/2 mil. I could take a little bit off the corners. So I mentioned before that plastic corners aren't quite square. You can see there, there's a gap there, but not right in the corner. So I could take a little bit off the corner of the timber. That would fit. It's pretty good, and that'll get gap filled. It's not getting gap filled there, but it's gap filled there. So I think I'm just going to let it go. As you can see, this is a piece of skirting that fits there. There's a little bit of a gap. That's alright. That can be hidden up there. So that's going to go off quite easy because we can just do that, and then in the corners, the skirting will come along the wall and just sit nicely under there. If we'd had this down 2 millimeters low, I would have had to take a little piece out of the corner there, which is, not quite as neat. So I'm pretty happy with the way it's turned out so far.
Thank you so much for watching and joining us on this part of the Cottage Loft project. There's still a lot to do, and while we couldn't quite finish in this video, we are getting so much closer. In the next video, we will tackle the final steps, adding those finishing touches to bring the loft to life. We can't wait to share it with you. Until then, thank you for being here, and we will see you in the next one.